Here we go. Do you think that music's ever gonna get old? I kind of just...
What's up?
I kind of don't think that music's gonna get old.
What'd you say? You don't
I
think
don't
what?
think that music's gonna get old.
No, that music is a classic.
Yeah.
Is what I would like to say that is.
I feel like Jeff needs to make more music. He does, actually. He does.
Sure,
Make
he's
it.
still been doing some music,
Oh
right?
yeah, he does it all the time. He does a Twitch stream,
Yeah.
if anyone's interested, where he makes music live, and you can go watch his process. It's pretty cool.
Good old Jeff.
Yeah.
Good old Jeff. Well, guys, welcome back. Episode Buck 34, Testing Normal. And coming to you live from the Marion County, Oregon.
County.
In case anybody was wondering.
That's a broad stroke, right?
It's a broad location, but still a location.
It's a weird shaped county. Have you noticed that? Like, it's like weird when you're still in it. Like,
yeah.
It just kind of like.
That's fair.
Like this long, like sweet potato shaped thing. Like,
there was some gerrymandering that took place. That's all.
Recently there was too. The new House district that we got, which I think actually may play in the favor of those of us who are sane.
You think it was favored towards
I actually
liberal parties or favored towards conservative parties?
I don't know. I think it actually was fairly balanced. I haven't looked into it. There are some people that are on both sides. I think it could have been a lot worse. So it's like I try to look at it glass half full. So it made an open spot, and the only people that are really running are fairly, I wouldn't say conservative, but they're just like level-headed. They're not woke, at least the ones that I've seen.
So hopefully, it essentially paved way for Greenpeace, is what you're trying to say.
Sure, yeah. It actually it paved way for the Paris Accord. It's probably gonna yes. It's probably gonna break us straight into nuclear cars. We'll be floating houses in the next nuclear 5 to 10 years. Completely sustainable, living off of cheese that we harvest off the moon, so that we don't harm the planet Earth because it's not here to sustain.
So finally, the steady diet of government cheese.
Yeah, it will literally like reincarnate Chris Farley, and he will come back because of the steady diet of government cheese.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't be too upset if we brought old Chris back. He's a classic.
Yeah, poor David Spade. Classic. Like, it wrecked his career.
David Spade, that dude's been through some losses, right?
Yeah.
His sister committed suicide. She had that famous.
I don't know all the history.
Furniture.
I just was thinking his career really went down the tank when he didn't have Chris Farley anymore. That's what I know.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
But
well, guys, we're gonna start us off with some TILs. Some tills.
Tillies.
Tills and tills. I have 3. Jordan has 2, so I'll go first.
Go.
Today I learned that ancient Sparta was a diarchy, a nation ruled by 2 kings.
I feel like that would be confusing. It would be one thing if it was like a democracy, right? Where there's a vote. Like if there was two people voting, it would be kind of annoying. Although, yeah. Whatever, you can make arguments either way, but kings, can you imagine? Like, well, I want to vote this way and I want to vote this way.
Well, I think what happened in that situation with a diarchy is they each ruled over different parts of government.
So is that really 2 kings, or is that just 2 different kingdoms?
Well, there was the same kingdom, but like one would rule over like agriculture, one would rule over finance, one would rule over military, one would rule over industries or whatever. I don't know.
I feel like that's just. I mean, it's not really around anymore. So.
I know, right? That might be a good idea.
We don't see it happening now.
If they were
experts. I think like that's like people that say like, well, communism is a good idea. I'm like, well, it hasn't worked yet. Yeah, but it might. But it's ended really poorly every other time.
They had 2 like really, really important families, and to avoid conflicts between the families, that they just appointed those 2 kings.
So that makes the questions. This is today I learned. So like I'm thinking about this, but when you think about that, it's like, oh, they didn't want those families to feud. Well, what about all the people that were living in those countries? Like, I think of like, you think of like our countries now. It's like these rulers can't get along, but like, who's talking about the Russian people? Who's talking about the Ukrainian people instead of just like these rulers being happy?
Yeah, and in that situation, when you have a monarchy / diarchy, I guess, they don't really care as much, right? Because they literally, if there's protests, especially in those times, you just kill them.
I guess what I'm saying is, with 2, they might care less. That's my thought process, because they're still just okay. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but maybe I'm wrong. Today I learned that since 2004, at least 18 people have died from contracting rabies after receiving organs from infected donors. Transplanted organs are not typically screened for rabies virus, which can incubate for up to a year or more before symptoms manifest, after which time it is nearly 100% fatal.
Can you give me the numbers? How many was that again?
18 since 2004, which is still pretty kind of shocking that 18 times people have had it incubate within their organs and then transplanted. So just to get it is rare, but to get it, die in a way that you could be an organ donor and then give the rabies to someone else that dies. That's
shocking.
Yeah.
It's shocking that they, it's fascinating that somebody was alive and cognizant enough to have rabies and think, hey, I'm going to go donate blood. Because usually with rabies, the symptoms are pretty prominent.
Right.
So it's surprising to me what that looked like is probably an individual who people assumed was either on methamphetamine or used to be on methamphetamine.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, okay, they're probably recovering. We'll still get their blood, though, because there's a crisis.
Yeah. Still,
I mean,
think about this. Both parties, it's rare, right? Like, it's not super common that people get rabies anymore, I would assume, right?
Oh, I'm just going to... Hi, Haley. Hope everything's good. Good to see you.
And then, like, so on top of that, it's not super common that somebody would be getting an organ.
Right.
And then...
Oh, God.
I mean, and you're already like, your life's bad because you're like, oh shoot, I have to get an organ. And then you get it and you're like, yay. And then you're like, I have rabies, and you die of rabies.
Gosh. Yeah. Can you imagine like telling, well, and these are, yeah. So what's crazy. It's just crazy thinking about that. Like, the level of disappointment that would create after all of those struggles to now say, hey, you're doing great. Everything's looking good. Little side note, you might have rabies. But
side note,
okay.
Have you read Old Yeller? You might die like those dogs.
Yeah, that's really crazy. That's really a bummer. But
yeah,
not many people. What's just surprising to me, I think the most surprising fact, like I was saying, is there's really no really effective treatment for an established infection of rabies.
Yeah.
And so
it has been established in somebody else, and then you're given it as a gift.
Right. That's just crazy that they got to the point where they could give blood. Huh. That's crazy.
Yep.
Or not give blood, but donate an organ. Well, okay. So this is the situation then.
They need to test for rabies.
It was someone that died. Yeah. So somebody like died in an MVA. It wasn't donating blood.
No.
Okay. Somebody that died in an MVA. They said, okay, you have a gallbladder, or not a gallbladder. You have maybe a liver or some lungs or something like that. You have an appendix.
Brain, probably. Like
brain. Yeah. An appendix transplant.
Mm-hmm. Probably the most common would be like liver, right? Like, wouldn't it be pretty concentrated there?
Kidneys are huge.
Okay.
Kidney transplants are a big one. Liver is a little bit different because you actually can do partial liver transplants.
Well,
too.
I mean specifically for the rabies virus. Like, I would think that.
Oh,
I would think filter type stuff would be the most, like you said.
Yeah, it could be
kidneys or
any. It's just such vascular organs that it could be living in any of them.
Either way.
I mean,
terrible.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one though, dude. That was a good one. Okay.
All right, you're up.
Today I learned it takes about 3 million presses to wear out a button on an Xbox controller.
So, how long did it take you to do that?
So this is what happened. They have a machine. Microsoft has a machine that goes, and it just keeps doing that until the button breaks, I guess.
Weird.
Or the spring. It's probably the spring.
Well, it's a membrane usually in there. That's impressive, though.
Insane. Yeah,
insane in the membrane, probably, yeah. Today I learned of truck wages, or company scrip, where an employer will pay employees in company-minted money that is only redeemable in company-owned stores. It is referenced in the sea shanty Wellerman, and the last company to get sued for using it was Walmart Mexico. Can you imagine? You pay your Walmart employees in Walmart bucks, and that's the only place they can spend it.
Okay. In reality, that's essentially just giving them gift cards.
Kind of.
Like you're just saying, hey, you get paid in Safeway gift cards if you're a Safeway employee.
But it was minted money. Like the I could show, like they had a picture of one.
That's amazing.
Let's see if I can pull the picture up.
That's insane. That's incredible and insane at the same time.
Here, I'm gonna pull up a full. Look at this. See, here's one that was minted for a store for 50 cents in
That's
goods.
So crazy.
Fort Laramie.
That's so crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, I would say that's probably pretty smart economics for the company.
Yeah, because imagine if you don't give them a discount, you're making a profit off of paying them in that, because they're paying you in the actual dollar amount for the thing.
Right. I think you should give employees an option. I think you should say, hey, if you want part of your pay to come out of gift cards or store credit, you can, and we'll give you like 25%.
Well, see, that's the thing, is these places were only paying them in that.
Right.
But the fact that it was Walmart Mexico is the last time, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Check out the heart of that company.
Okay, so the last TIL that I have for you guys, I thought this one's kind of fascinating. Today I learned that hummingbirds are one of the few bird species that pees.
I've heard of the fact that like bird poop is just like watery, that's like the same thing, right? Like they pee poop at the same time, and it's gross.
Mm-hmm.
But hummingbirds like do both?
Hummingbirds have a separate, I don't know if it's exactly a urinary tract, but a separate excretion of urine as well as feces. And it's still kind of like a semi-solid waste, but it's called diurnal.
Weird.
But they apparently they're one of the few species that have specifically just the ability to pee as well.
Hummingbirds are weird.
In case anybody was wondering about that.
Hummingbirds are weird. I caught one the other day. Like in my garage, yeah. I went out to my car and I heard this. What the? It's like one of those sounds that's in my head. Like, and I look over and there's a hummingbird stuck against the window, and he's just hovering up and down the window. So I grabbed a pair of gloves. It's like, I don't want to hurt him or anything.
Yeah.
And so I had to climb way up there because the window's pretty far up there, and slowly kind of try to pin him to one spot. And then I caught him, and I held him to kind of keep him warm, and because it was kind of cold out too. And I walked up to the front door and had the kids come and look at it. And then I just went, let him go. And he's like, zzz. He flew away and he landed on a branch, and he looked back at me and just sat and stared. It's like, what just happened?
I'm freaking out, man.
It was crazy. It's pretty cool though. And his heart was, you could feel it.
Because hummingbirds, I don't really see them a lot in wintertime.
No, and this was a few weeks ago too. It wasn't that long ago, but it was colder than, well, today was pretty cold, but it was a sunnier day, but it wasn't,
okay, here's a question.
So
for anybody out there listening, I'm going to look it up right now. Do hummingbirds, you ready for this? Do hummingbirds migrate?
Speak English.
Okay, here's what it says.
I would imagine they're not very distance runners.
Oh my God.
No.
The majority of North American hummingbirds fly to Mexico or Central America for the winter.
Can you imagine?
What?
Well,
these journeys aren't as long as those made by South American-bound warblers. They are impressive nonetheless.
That is impressive.
I never would have thought a little baby hummingbird could fly all the way to Mexico. Oh my gosh.
It wouldn't be in a straight line. Geese are they're jets, right? But but a hummingbird would be like a roller coaster. You'd be so dizzy by the end. You're like, Like,
okay. So all those little feeders, all those little hummingbird feeders that everybody puts out, on their back patios and everything, like you're providing for those little hummingbirds to make it all the way to Mexico during the wintertime.
on sugar.
So keep them out.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, that's why it makes sense to keep those things out in the fall and wintertime, because you got those poor little birds migrating.
Yeah. And apparently my garage catches them every once in a while. So, and if you're wondering, like, they aren't that difficult to catch if they're stuck in a window. So
that's crazy. I'm pretty sure hummingbirds also have the fastest, like, wing RPM. I don't know if RPM is the right word. FPM?
Flaps per minute.
Flap per minute.
Feathers per minute.
I'm going to look that up.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, well, while you look that up, okay, we've got a fun couple things to talk about tonight. I kind of, you had alluded to something that was going to be a little, I don't know, what did you call it? Tinfoil hat. Should we? Do you want to start with that, or you want to go into that? End with that?
I can go into that. It's a little crazy, guys. It's a little crazy. I'm just gonna throw out some stats here real quick, because everybody was probably wondering about this. So hummingbirds. Yeah. So hummingbirds do flap their wings, FPM, faster than any other bird at 70 wing beats per second.
FTW. I feel like it should be, because that's a really cool acronym for it to be. Flap their wings. FTW.
Yeah, but I think you got to get like you got to go flaps per what? Oh. Flaps per minute, flaps per second, FPS.
Ooh, you can do FPS would be great.
FPS is good.
Yeah, so it's about 1.25 flaps per second. Wait.
No. They do 70
per second?
FPS. Yeah.
Crap.
Yes, guys, ladies and gentlemen.
You know what would be amazing?
70 FPS.
Is to put lights on them that like make signs, because it would be right at the hertz that you could see it, and you could like do like hummingbird messages. I think we missed this with carrier pigeons. It could be like Skyriders, but just with hummingbirds.
That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. That is really crazy. Well, anyways, that adds up to 4,000 WPM wing beats per minute. 4,000 wing beats per minute, just in case you were wondering.
I think it's okay, so FPM guys, is flaps per minute.
Yes.
We've established that now. It is canon.
I was going a little bit on a rabbit trail, listening to some podcasts, listening to some interesting things. And I was listening to these, I didn't know this, but there's these people that have conspiracy theories of basically space is fake. So
okay.
Now I'm not saying space is fake, guys. Okay, I'm not pushing that. But we've all heard of flat earthers, right? And sure, it's an interesting trend. Not saying I believe it, right? But they have.
Is this the NASA one?
No, that's a different one. This is actually, it's not an article.
Oh, okay.
It's just some thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. All right, go.
So anyways, he was talking about how throughout time, a government usually wants to expand. Like most governments want to become larger and more powerful. Just the way the nature of government works. Unless there's really hard barriers to prevent it, a government will usually expand and grow and bloat and try to seek more power for itself.
Okay.
And I think throughout history, we have seen several examples of government. And when I say government, it doesn't have to be government. It could be a system. It could be like you look at like the Roman Catholic Church back in the day. Like it was this massive thing. It sought more control over different territories. They used the Crusades as they said it was a religious purpose, but really it was for power and resources and certain expansion roles in that area.
Right.
And so you look at all these things, governments love to have power. And it was interesting after I started listening about that. And I thought, what is a way a government can seek more power? And in certain situations, it's wars, right? So like if you get a unifying battle, you get a common enemy. If the United States and I don't know, Great Britain and the European Union all have a common enemy, say Russia, or Russia has a common enemy with China and with North Korea and these different powers, right? They have the ability to kind of work to come together. And I think that perhaps in the future, whether it's, a pandemic that's even more escalated, or whether it's some type of critical event, I think we're going to see more and more wild unifying events that then help promote and push a one world government. And I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but I think we're going to see more consolidation of governments in larger and larger ways, like we have the European Union to a degree, like we have certain, NATO's kind of getting more power because more countries are saying, hey, we want this versus that. But I think that we're going to start seeing a continued expansion of that.
I think we already are. I mean, that's where people that, used to be said that they have tinfoil hats on talk about the one world order. And now it's like, they're just saying it. Like you hear George Soros talk about it. You hear even like, Justin Trudeau talk about it. They name it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and JFK did
that way. Mm-hmm.
JFK did. And I wanted to read a little quote for you guys. And I've brought this up before in the past with podcasts, but this will kind of explain a little bit why I brought up certain, like, I talked about, space is fake, or I brought up, flat earthers. Because I think there's a little bit of a connection here. But in 1987, in a unifying speech to the United Nations, Ronald Reagan delivered an address without any precedent before or since. So, like, nobody's said this type of speech to the United Nations before. But he said, perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize the common bond. And to that, I can understand, like, his desire to have humanity seek common bonds. I love that. I get it. But Reagan then told diplomats from all over the planet, I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Yeah.
So this is the president of the world, the president of the most powerful country in the world at that time, saying, I think that we should have aliens attack and we could use them
that's
as a unifying agent.
I think right? Maybe he was using it as a metaphor to say, like, it's maybe because I've heard that speech too.
Mm-hmm.
I hear him saying it's kind of sad that people don't come together until they're in hard times, kind of highlighting the fact that maybe we should, outside of hard times, make an effort. That's how I hear that. And I think that would fit more with the sentiment of other things he did talk about, because I feel like he was somebody who was a little bit more, I would say, liberal in his beliefs, and as he kind of aged, became more conservative, or conservative just kind of got shifted to the side. But I think that's more in line with it. I hear what you're saying.
But I think that if you want to take
or
that
he's
a
just
deeper,
kind of like, I think he was also a thinker too, because it was like, if you listen to like people from before that, like even Einstein and stuff, the way that he thought about things, he would always use like these weird thoughts to like come up with a conclusion that aren't possible to do, but prove a theory.
Yeah.
So like relativity of time, he used the experiment, the thought experiment of traveling to the nearest star and looking back in a telescope to the Earth, which is not even possible to do. But being able to see back in time and how time is relative to the observer, right? And the observed, it's different. And we know that now, but it was the thought experiment. He wasn't saying, I would like to go to another planet and look back at the telescope.
Let's take this, let's just go a little tinfoil with it. Let's take it a little bit farther, because sure, he could have just been making an analogy to make, people play nice. But what if
really want
the recent, we kind of had a weird situation. I think it was last year. It was last year where the U.S. government started releasing information about UFOs. And it kind of did it in a weird, like, titrated way. Like, they gave a little bit of information over a period of time, and then a little bit more information that was kind of didactic. redacted. And none of it had any like significant good, like the picture quality, and it was all kind of a little bit sketchy. But at that time, the world was going through like, a pandemic was at a heightened point. There was political discord that was really heightened in tension.
Of course, all those things come out when the things we want to hear are coming out, right?
Right. And so like there was
we're returning to normal, Russia.
Right. Like, yeah. And so it's fascinating to me that like I think that there is some ploy and some maneuvering that the government does to perhaps unite people with a external, maybe not threat, but an external distraction. And
I think complacent people are easily ruled people. And that was what was unique about the idea of our country, at least in the beginning, was that it was supposed to be, instead of a government ruling, it was the people allowing for protection and rule of the government, right? But I think when people say the government, and I do the same thing, I'm completely guilty of it. They forget that the government is people too. Like it's made up of people, but it might be people who are inherently evil.
But are they lizard people? They're probably lizard people.
I mean, but it might be people who are inherently evil. And that's where like, I may disagree with Joe Biden. Do I think he's evil? Personally, I think given the evidence of pedophilia, probably. But there are other people who I just genuinely disagree with, that I don't think are necessarily evil. They just have a different plan to embetter the place that I think is maybe bad.
It's interesting that people, but let's to be fair, like everybody has evil in them.
Yes,
like,
but I mean, but I'm saying like,
obviously,
but yes, they do. But I'm saying like somebody who like, so like we do, right? You and I, we would have those evil tendencies. Some people, they are wired. We know this because there are people who just want to kill people, right? And that's their drive. There's murderers that you literally can't keep from murdering. They will continue. And so we have to lock them up. It's not wise to let them run around in society because we know what they're going to do. No matter how many chances we give them, they're going to do the same. And that's evil, right?
Here's an interesting thing with that, though, with evil. And this is something that I've thought about sometimes. An individual like that there are people that you can see like, and the choices that they made, they're choosing evil, right? Like, and there's different
and over again
levels of evil, right? Like there's levels of evil with respect to maybe a serial killer that just can't contain his or her ability to, or desire to murder people or infants or whatever, something atrocious.
Right.
But then there's people like that are, what's the path, I guess? Is that they're not murderers, but they don't have the ability.
I would think the people you just described probably fall into sociopath, where they feed off of the emotions of others because they have no emotions themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't connect well, and there's no grief or sorrow. Where you or I, like just about any person,
or guilt,
we would be like, this is a tragedy. Like human life being lost is a tragedy. We feel that, and they do not. They would maybe feel joy, like it's messed up, like,
or they would feel joy because they feel something.
But I do think that there's people who choose evil just because of power. I think there's a lot of people who we've had as rulers in our own country.
Look at Putin.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about power, and you see people, it exists because there's people in like positions that are non-paid that just want power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that it's something that some people crave. And I think that some people actually do well with it. Like even, I don't know. It's such a rabbit hole, but like a rabbit trail, whatever.
It's fascinating though. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
All that to be said, I think the government is going to create a one world order and we're going to fight.
I think they already are. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people want. I feel like, I believe obviously.
Somebody said something.
I believe it will happen, and it will be to the detriment of this world.
Somebody said something. I'd agree. I think I was listening to a conversation, and these people were talking about how they didn't want to have like a microchip put in them when they were like to have to like go through security points or to do something like that. And they didn't want the government to have access to their location and access to, you know, their finances and all these different things. And the amazing thing is like, that's already happened. Like, it's not,
you just carry it.
It's not a microchip, bro. It's this. It's there. It's already, and we're
I think the difference is that someone that does want to can turn it off and leave it. And their fear is that they wouldn't be able to. And I think, I mean, honestly, we see that, like, it's almost like that in Korea. I mean, imagine a one world order where Korea, it was ruled like Korea. We would stand no chance. Well, it would be the Hunger Games.
I would say,
we write about it. We have a fascination of fear of it.
Yeah.
As a culture, and we love to like watch, and we're like in terror, like, oh my gosh, can you imagine? I mean, that's possible.
I would counter though. You almost can't live without it in certain ways, because now in our society, in certain societies, it's much more difficult to live without certain levels of technology, because most work requires you to have certain levels of technology.
Yeah, I would agree. But you can have days and times and stuff where you're not doing it, right? If you choose. I mean, some people don't choose.
Have you ever been tempted to have to go flip? You ever been tempted to go? You're like
100% no.
Hell no.
No, I would rather just turn it off. To me, it's like it's too much of a pain in the butt to switch over. And because
that is a hard one.
So like there are a lot of things that kind of require it. It would be kind of annoying to not have it at times. So it would have to be a situation where like I could use that and then not. I think the closest thing you get is that you just have a watch, like a watch that uses your same number and stuff, and you can leave. Like I could leave my phone at home now. I could still make a phone call from my watch, but I can't like check the internet. I mean, you can.
Could you read your email? Your email would be tough.
You can, but it's like very limiting. So it's like it's almost like having things turned off. So there's.
Could you put Microsoft Teams on your iWatch?
I don't know if they make an app or not. Probably.
Yeah. I'm trying to think in my head here what I could get away with if I wanted to try just a watch.
Yeah, so it depends. Teams, it depends on how you are connected. Some of them require like a third-party authentication to get connected to that server, so it would be tough. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
You would at base minimum, bare minimum, you get text, and that's pretty much. Like if you get text in a phone, like today in the world that we're in, it's like. So much is communicative. Like I remember going to the mall and be like, okay, everyone's gonna meet back here at 3:15, and then we'll decide what we're gonna do, and then we're gonna meet back here at 3:45, and then you know what I mean. And that's just not the world we live in, and I don't think we're gonna go back to that unless like a giant EMP goes off or something. And then those of us that live through both are gonna thrive, right? So,
yeah.
And I remember it's really fascinating if no one's read World War Z. It's a short story book about
it's a good movie too.
Basically post-zombie apocalypse. Yes, but that's only one of the stories from the book. And so it goes through like as if it has already happened, and it talks about the different situations. And the one thing that does talk about is the blue collar worker and the white collar, and how their roles flip-flopped because the white collar was unable to do anything physical. And so the bosses became those who knew how to build, who knew how to clean, who knew how to service, who knew how to maintain. And it created this dynamic of craziness. And there's this one story you read, and at the end of that story, you realize the lady hates this lady so much because she used to be her maid. And so she like is racist towards her because she's Latino, and she can't handle the fact that she's now her boss in this new world. And anyway, the book has a lot of really cool like short stories like that are written as if the world has come back and is normal again, and it's a history book. It's pretty cool. And the audiobook is really, really good, and Mel Brooks, I believe, is one of the voices, and it's really cool.
On that technology note, I wanted to ask you about this coming from an IT world. I've read several articles, and I have one listed here about Anonymous, and it was just released like today today. It came out today, and it says how Anonymous hits 3 Russian entities and leaks 400 gigabytes worth of emails. And the three entities, one was oil and gas sector. Another one was in just pure oil, and then the other one was like forestry or something like that. But what power, if governments have like the top tier, all the resources, all the money for hacking and all this type of like government espionage with IT world, what true power does Anonymous have to make moves? Do they have more power and capability, you think, than a government would? Or do you think they are kind of just picking low-hanging fruit?
I would use this analogy to answer that question. Because you said like the government has all the means and everything, and I would wholeheartedly disagree. We saw that this last few years, that they don't have all the means. Those that do are these giant corporations that control different entities of our world. So Amazon grew in a time where our government was crashing, and Google grew in a time when everyone was locked up, and Facebook paid millions and millions of dollars to try and like swing elections in cities, right? These corporations build that tech. So these people in Anonymous, we don't know who they are. They're all over the world. They build and work on and know that tech. Governments don't. They don't have the best. The best builds what they have. That's the problem. I mean, it's not the problem. I think it's good. Mm-hmm. It keeps them in check. So to answer your question, if the best build what the government uses, mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly believe that institutions and organizations like Anonymous have worlds more power than the biggest government in the world.
See, that would make me think and question then. Anonymous has made several statements how they're not going to give up until Russia leaves Ukraine. But that would make me think, if that was the case, how and why have they not made larger strides in attacking Russian infrastructure by this time?
Well, I mean, it's what access they have, and they don't want to expose themselves either. So they know the tech and what's been built. So they're doing it in ways to try to keep their tracks covered too. So be like, you wouldn't want to sneak into Russia as a person. Like these people, these virtue signalers that are like, I'm going to volunteer for Ukraine, and they just become meat shields, right? That's not what Anonymous is. They're saying they don't want to be found. I mean, it's literally in their name, right? Mm-hmm. So they're having to do this in ways that shields who they are and where it's coming from. And I would wager that they already do have more. They don't want to hurt people. Like I think Anonymous has been very clear about that, right? And so like you think about the emails that hurt so many of the intelligence operatives when Julian Assange started to be looked at, and he was saying, I would like to redact these and release them in a safe manner because I do not want to hurt people. He didn't want to hurt anybody. He thought the information needed to be out there, but he didn't think it needed to be out there so much that it would affect even the human lives that were in intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. And they didn't believe him. And I truly do believe him. And I think Anonymous is in that same boat. They want to make sure that what they release is only hurting the people that need to be hurt. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine if you could fight a war where the only people that got hurt were truly the people calling the shots and fighting for evil.
That would change everything, right?
Right. Yeah. And so they're probably able to do that more so. And I would say 400 gigabytes, not a lot of information these days. I bet they have more. I bet that's just the start to try and scare. Because you didn't bomb Hiroshima at the beginning of World War II, right? You don't use your biggest guns first. I mean, we know that from every superhero movie. You get to the end and you're like, why didn't he just do that in the beginning?
That's true. Yeah, they could be taking it at a slow burn. Yeah, I think that perhaps they could escalate it if they have the ability to. That's interesting.
But that is the perspective to think about, is these companies build the things that governments use.
Tammy asked a question. She said, did you guys watch the series about Elizabeth Holmes?
I did not.
I did.
I don't think. Okay, you did.
And I can't recall the name of the actress. But what I did like, I had watched an actual documentary on it prior to the miniseries coming out. And I really thought they did a great job on capturing the way her voice changes. Like she purposefully changed the inflection of her voice and the depth of her voice. So it started off, very high, or, just a normal 19-year-old female. And then as time went on, she started talking more like this and trying to sound more like more commanding presence, I guess you would say. And it was unique to see this girl who, almost she just sounded like she was a robot, or sounded super fake. Another thing that she actually really felt like it was important for her to do was always, when she's having a conversation, keep her eyes open. She didn't want to blink, because blinking made it look like she didn't have as much attention, and she wasn't giving as much consideration to it. And so it was fascinating to see like all these snippets about this girl that became the wealthiest person in the world. She was worth like $9 billion. She was like the wealthiest woman in the shortest period of time.
Wow.
It was crazy. You guys should watch it if you have time.
It's cool. I wanted to ask you about, I'm sure most of it's come out today, and I was taking a look into it because I kind of knew some of these stats, but I was kind of curious your take, because I've had some people that have come to me and said, there's a couple things when it comes to weapons or guns or whatever, that people are like, this is what needs to happen. I'm like, well, that's already a law. It's just criminals are bad people. And so you can't just keep making laws that we have to follow, but they never intend to follow. Right. And Biden came out with an executive order on ghost guns. Now, his description of ghost guns is not the actual description of them. Not shocking, but so the actual definition of them is that they are weapons that are homemade, that are non-serialized. And in his statement, in trying to make them illegal, which I don't think is going to work, was that now when guns are found without serial numbers, they're untraceable. So we can't figure out where this came from. So I'm curious if you've read any of this, have any thoughts on this for ghost guns. Now, the name in and of itself, my definition is truly what it is. It's just a gun without a serial number that's created. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts as to how many are actually found in criminals that are actual ghost guns. Because here's the thing. If you're going to fight a problem, you want to actually like wage rules and things around the actual problem, right?
How much? Well, and also analyze how much of a problem is it.
Right. Yeah. So in digging, I could not find any solid numbers. I looked around for other people that would have been looking for them as well. And the only thing that could be found in the last year is that it was a word of mouth thing that was said in California that also included when criminals filed off serial numbers from weapons that had them. And they were including those in the numbers, but the numbers were never done or given. It was just a verbal, it's a lot, to a news organization to then say it. So no one actually did a study.
What this is, essentially it's saying, we believe this could be a problem. And so since it could be a problem, we are going to try to...
It is a problem. If you go listen to his speech, he said this is a problem because we're finding them and we can't trace them. Now, a little thing that people don't understand about background checks with them is that the only thing that they're actually required to like register is if you're a first time buyer of said weapon. So if you go to the store and you purchase it, it's in your name, right? If you go and sell it and you do a background check on that person, which in a lot of states that's required, you have to go and have them do a background check before you can physically hand them the weapon. I have my thoughts about that, but whatever. That's the law. It still would track back to you and it would tell them nothing. So it's not like the serial number is just for the company putting it out. Most of the time it's just used if there's a malfunction or something. And what I'm thinking, what I feel like is happening here is that they're trying to actually like make it so that making weapon parts is illegal. Now, that terrifies me to a degree that I don't think people understand. You and I have had the conversation about like why we think that nobody has land fought the US. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have the Second Amendment, and you know, there are rules and there are laws that we're supposed to follow. Criminals aren't supposed to have guns. If they do, I mean, if you outlaw them, to me, in my mind, I was thinking about this today. I was like, what is a good example of something that like we would outlaw because people are stupid with it that we've done in the past? Mm-hmm. We did it with alcohol.
Did it with fireworks.
People tried to, I did it with fireworks. And a lot of that is like, I mean, alcohol came back. It's like, well, there's a lot of things that we don't stop driving cars because they hurt people. We try to take the people off the road that consistently drive drunk.
Yeah. Do you know there's only 3 countries in the world that currently have constitutional rights to own a gun?
Really?
Yeah, there's only 3 countries in the entire world. Guess what the other 2 are, other than the United States?
One's here. That's a freebie, right?
Anybody out there have a guess? This
Sweden.
is really surprising to me.
Sweden?
No,
I know they're required to take them home because they're military. Everyone's military.
So the other 2 countries are Mexico.
Weird.
And Guatemala.
Guatemala.
I would have never guessed that. Now, those countries don't have the highest gun ownership after the United States. It's this is weird. I'm not even sure where this is. The Falkland Islands. I don't know where that is. That's terrible of me. Yemen, which nobody really wants to compare ourselves to Yemen right now. New Caledonia. I don't know. I've never heard of New Caledonia.
Where are these? This must be per capita.
It sounds like a Disney made up. Like
it does, yeah. Pocahontas came from there.
Region.
So New I do Caledonia. Know when we were going through training for Iraq that they have a family gun. That's like they're allowed to have one, and
yes,
and they will carry it with them. So like when they're at checkpoints, if you're running a checkpoint, they made note like if you find one AK, that's right. Cool. That's their family gun. They're allowed. But if there's more than one, then you start asking questions like, is this 2 families? Maybe. You know, it's not necessarily bad. It's just like, hey, let's ask some questions. So I think it's interesting. It's like, if I still, and I think we've had this conversation a lot. I think a lot of what goes on is mental problems and mental health issues that we don't address. And we keep, it's like, would you put a Band-Aid over an artery, like spraying? Like that wouldn't be how you would address it. You would go to the root of it, right?
Well, and to that point, that actually ties in really well. If there's more you want to say on that, sorry to interrupt you on that.
Well, yeah, we can go whatever after that. My whole thing is like people have different things that they want, and I think firearms should be a legal thing. Constitutionally, it's going to be really hard to get rid of that. This is them just trying to sidestep that. This is, to me, like, you know, and we talk about this often, I'm not a big virtue signal fan when people just like jump on something because it makes them look good. Have a reason. So like generally I'll have a conversation with people and they'll be like, I don't think guns should be there. I think there should be more gun laws. Cool. My first question is I've learned this because I used to be just pretty hostile towards it because I don't agree with it. But my question now is, and I would ask this to anybody, if they wanted to have the conversation, you're totally free to call me. What law would you like? Like what law and if it's like, we should remove all guns, well, that's not possible. Okay. So dial it back a little bit. What laws do you think would help? And I think ghost guns, the ones they're talking about. So these kits, just to be really, really clear, and then we can go into what you want to talk about. They aren't kits. They're something you actually have to mill out of metal. So you have to have specialty tools in order to do this. This isn't just like in his speech, he said, people can get these and build them in 30 minutes. I'm like, no. The ones you can build in 30 minutes have a serial number on them and you can put them together, but you had to get a background check to get it. These ghost guns, quote unquote, are millable parts that you have to have a metal lathe and a threader and a cutter for most of them. They are partially cut out of aluminum and you have to cut them the rest of the way to spec. You can't just, not anyone can just do that. Unless you're like a professional metal worker, you're not doing it in 30 minutes. And even them, I would say that's pretty good time if they did it in 30 minutes. And I don't think any of these cartels or criminals are gonna be like, let's get ghost guns. They'll never find us with those. Like,
not yet. Who knows? Not yet.
Well, no, but the serial number wouldn't ever track to them. That's what I'm saying. Like, you wouldn't, like, I don't know. It's just silly. It's just, to me, it's just like, this is hilarious. People are probably like, oh my gosh, he's totally doing great. Like, if that's what you want,
it's also, it's a good news article, right? It sounds good.
It does sound good. And when he talks about it, I'm like, this isn't even right. Like, it's not even what he's saying isn't even what this is going against. Yeah. I don't actually think from his description and reading it that this does anything to stop the ghost guns that are out there, because it's up to the states. And actually, it's not a gun if it's just a piece of metal, and people can make it on their own.
Like not a flamethrower.
Right. Yes. You just call it not a flamethrower.
Well, that leads me to when we're talking about, mental health. And this is kind of the last article I want to hit out here, but
yeah.
It was a really interesting article, and I have the link to it from Technology Networks. And it was a new trial that came out. So in Oregon, particularly the western states, some in London as well. This one was out of London. There's been some really cool studies that have come out from the use of psilocybin for major depression. And there's been several case studies that have shown psilocybin as a treatment for major depression when other antidepressants failed, like SSRIs, Celexa. There's a whole list of different types of antidepressants you can use. But they found that in a lot of times there was system failure for individuals when they were taking these antidepressants. But when they gave them psilocybin in randomized controlled trials, they found that the psilocybin actually broke these individuals from what they're calling the rut of depression. And what was fascinating is they found, after several different functional MRIs that they were doing, what they think is happening, and this makes a lot of sense, is that what's taking place is with people that, oftentimes when you hear somebody that's in depression, they'll say like they're in a rut. Right? Like they're in a rut, they can't get out of this like rut of depression, and they just keep falling back into it. Even if they get some type of like dopamine rush or serotonin rush, they still get back in this rut. And what they're seeing is with this chemical reaction, it's actually breaking up a lot of these neuron networks that are connected to aspects in the brain that fire and trigger and cause this depression loops. And so what's happening is you're having this disintegration, basically, of these entrenched brain networks that are corresponding and supporting these depressant or depressive natures. And so what they found then, after these individuals were on these trials of psilocybin, was new networks began forming after these old ones were destroyed.
Right.
And it was allowing for neuron growth in a lot of parts of the brain that are responsible for your mood. And so individuals that were struggling with depression were not only able to taper off of the psilocybin, but they weren't going back in those same kind of ruts that they were previously in, because they had destroyed those ruts of previous brain pathways that then allowed them to kind of think. And that's why we hear a lot of individuals, you would hear hippies in the past talk about, using shrooms and like, man, it's just a different way of thinking, man. And that's kind of what's happening here. I mean, in certain ways.
I would argue, aren't some of those probably slightly different doses? I mean, there's this famous, there's this famous like clip going around right now where Mike Tyson just grabs a handful of mushrooms and eats them. And they're like, dude, you're nuts. And he is nuts. Like, we'll just be real. But
he's been hit a couple times, right?
Yeah.
Well, and
he's also admittedly done a lot of.
There's a lot of studies that have shown certain types of mushrooms not psilocybin specifically, but have had a neurogenic benefit to them.
Yeah.
And so in this situation, it's very interesting to see, and because I'm not a huge fan personally of the way certain antidepressants affect the body and the way they have certain types of they're dangerous in certain ways when you're trying to taper off of them. They have such really harsh rebound effects from depression.
Yeah, that's what makes me upset. I'm be curious where these are, like who is actually doing these studies and where they are, because it was like for so long you couldn't even get the state as in the government to allow you to do like cannabis experiments.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's fascinating. So shrooms now.
So why is this so? Why are they so much more open to this? And that makes me kind of question it in a sense, even though I think that. Well,
there's been more of a market. If you look at it, cannabis has more of a market to compete with jail systems, to compete with legal systems, to compete with alcohol.
I think also like it did solve a lot of things for some people, and it combated it because it was just a plant and it couldn't be.
That's what I'm saying. Like it
couldn't be like harnessed in a way monetarily that only held it to these pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
So is that what they're going to try to do with psilocybin? Because the reason why, at least in reading through a lot of stuff, is that they couldn't ever get it down to like a synthesized way without doing the natural way. So they couldn't get it copyrighted or trademarked or patented. And so they kind of held off on it.
It might get to that point, but I think that we're a little bit in a different stage of society where certain social norms are being challenged. And I think that we're going to hopefully see a healthy expansion from big pharma not having as much control on all.
Well, originally what got some of the, like what actually triggered the marijuana not being grown anymore was the fact that they said it was the same thing as hemp, and hemp was actually like hammering the steel industry
and paper.
And so they weren't able to keep up with it, and farmers were growing it like mad because it could grow quick and it had almost a tensile strength of steel if done right. And so they were most of the donors that basically looped it into the same thing to make it illegal. Like
that's what I would say a significant portion of laws come from. So shower thought time. You good for shower thoughts? All right, I got 3. All right. From a gamer standpoint, my first shower thought is.
I have one. Do you have this one as yours? No.
No, okay.
I just realized I doubled up on one of yours, but it's cool. Oh wait, maybe not. No, I did. Yeah, you go first, then I have 2.
If you think about it, from a gamer standpoint, your mom is technically a spawn point.
It's true.
If you think about it.
It's never like quick. You can't like respawn. That's the problem.
Not a respawn.
Yeah.
Just a spawn.
Yeah. Although some people are really testing that. The Buster Bluths of the world.
Oh my gosh.
With all the celebrity liquor brands, we have Aviation Gum. We have tequilas. We got what's his face? His whiskey. Johnny Depp is missing out on an opportunity for a celebrity rum.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. That's a great point. I'm shocked that he hasn't done that yet. He's kind of losing his momentum.
But he'd come back if he did that.
He could. It is technically impossible to stand backwards on stairs.
It's true. Unless they're escalators.
Right. Yep, that's true.
Then you might be.
Maybe Hogwarts stairs too.
Yeah. Unless they're those MC Escher stairs, I think you're only standing backwards.
Ugh. Those are frustrating.
Yeah. News did to our parents what they said video games would do to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And then since we were talking about 3D printing earlier, a spider is the OG of 3D printing.
It's true. They also make their house with their butt.
They do. Gross.
Some spiders, they fly a kite with their butt, and they are the kite.
Ooh. That's kind of
be
fun.
Kind of painful, wouldn't it?
Maybe. Or maybe it'd kind of be like exciting. I don't know. Maybe it's like,
unless you get too big of a bump.
Once you get too big of a bump, yeah. Guys, well, hopefully you have a delightful week. I almost said delicious.
It could be delicious.
Delicious would be good too.
I would accept.
I am very excited. I'm going to go watch Survivor with my esposa, my beautiful esposa. Very excited about. I think I'm on episode 5 right now, and I'm pretty pumped about that.
I've never been a fan of that show.
Well, it takes a certain type of class to really be.
Does it?
Show.
Yeah, lower class.
It's mid to lower class.
Yeah,
it takes a certain type of class.
Yeah, it's speaking about drama. You were telling me like, oh, I don't know how you deal with drama. That show.
No, this is a game of wits.
It's no wits. There is no wits.
Oh my God.
No.
Wits. Don't let the Survivor community hear you. Careful.
This is a show where opposing views are okay, and I'm on the side of Survivor. I never liked it.
Oh, it's so good.
Sorry. It's fine if you do. Guys. I don't care. I'm happy for you.
Have a fantastic week. Stay classy. Go watch Survivor if you have time.
Or don't.
Don't. It's your choice. All right, guys. Talk to you later.
See ya.